Good morning. Welcome to Jesus TV. This is a special episode of Pluck Out My Eye. So this is like a prelude to the other episodes, a preamble, if you will, to the episodes of Pluck Out My Eye, which can be viewed at www.getmorejesus.com. Scroll on down to Jesus TV and you'll see those sets of episodes. Okay, so woke up this morning and Jesus had me write down this episode, so we'll follow the script. For architects and engineers and designers of early Zion is actually the name of the episode. A few months after the TV series Pluck Out My Eye was finished, Jesus put it into my heart to add this additional episode 00. This episode is a kind of preamble. I believe Jesus is having me place it here first to remind me and set my expectations of what the Lord has prophesied to me, that I am assigned as an architect and engineer of early Zion, and that principally and almost exclusively I am an early forerunner of certain initial foundation related features of eventual Zion. What was that about? Maybe I spelt it wrong. That I'm assigned as an architect and engineer of early Zion, and that, there we go, principally and almost exclusively those who are going to be interested in this television program are also architects, engineers, and designers of early Zion. There we go. We're editing on the fly here. And I am an early forerunner of certain initial foundation-related features of eventual Zion. As you proceed watching the Jesus TV series Pluck Out My Eye, if indeed Jesus puts it into your heart to proceed, you will very soon know if you are called to this work or not. If you feel called by desire or driven by duty, and I hope that those who go through Pluck Out My Eye aren't driven by duty, but I've been driven by duty to a lot of things, and that's okay. It's nice to be able to negotiate with Heavenly Father and your spirit to be drawn by desire. So if you feel called by desire or drawn by desire, or even driven by duty, then it is very likely that your mission on earth is related to being and or helping the architects, engineers, and designers of early Zion. If, as you are watching the following episodes, you do not feel called, you do not feel drawn by desire or driven by duty, then it is very likely that you have a different Zion-related mission that Jesus is having you go on. So Jesus is in the storm of your heart. Trust it. I myself have to learn to trust that. And I have to remind myself to trust that. In fact, that's why Jesus had me make this episode. Jesus has had to continually remind me that the people who will have an abiding interest or any interest at all in the TV series Pluck Out My Eye will likely only be the architects, engineers, and designers of early Zion. Whether they understand that that's what they are, I don't know, but maybe by the end of the Pluck Out My Eye, they will. In other words, few there will be who find it. Few people will find Pluck Out My Eye of great interest or importance. And that is just how it is to be at this stage in history. Jesus has assured me that I do not need to do any hard selling, extensive promotion, cajoling, browbeating, or anything like that to get people to watch Pluck Out My Eye. Jesus will put the desire into the hearts of men and women and children who are called to this work. And only them, probably. They will have in their hearts and minds roughly what I, Greg, have. Jesus has put it into my heart to develop a television program called Pluck Out My Eye and to watch it again and again. What is more, Jesus has put it into my heart to actually do Zion building things that are mentioned throughout the Pluck Out My Eye Jesus television program. The bottom line is this. Jesus told me, just the same way that Jesus calls people to different careers, and he puts it in people's hearts to seek certain spouses or to do certain callings in life. This is like that. And that is if you believe that God directs your paths. If you just think, no, we're just down on earth, we just kind of go willy-nilly. Well, I know we do a lot of that, but do you trust that if you stay close to God, through prayer, through trying to live right, that he will direct your paths? I believe that. And so that's why this episode. All those who are called by desire, Jesus puts it in their heart. Okay, so this is an additional framework to view this. All those who are called by desire, Jesus puts it into their heart. It's him. He puts into their heart the desire to build early Zion. Many are called, few are chosen. But if you are chosen, you're part of a worldwide, huge puzzle that is starting to come together, to be gathered together. I right now have certain architects and engineers who kind of recognize themselves as such, but they've been joining with me and with one another and starting to do work. And I don't know if they've actually watched all the Pluck Out My Eye. Don't care. Leave that between them and Jesus. Sorry, I had to scratch my eye. I had to pluck out my eye. So, if you feel called to build early Zion, know this. You are a single piece of the puzzle, which Jesus will eventually and miraculously bring together one piece at a time, one person at a time. While you're waiting for Jesus to hook you up with other pieces, other people with complementary gifts or structures, callings of early Zion, be patient. That is what Jesus told me. And Jesus has had to be forcefully retraining my mind to understand and accept the need for me to wait patiently, because it is super hard to be super patient when you are on the verge of a marvelous work and a wonder foretold throughout history, which we are, and you know that. When you believe, and you can thus see where we are in history now, right now, 2022, you want to open up all the early Zion and eventual Zion heavenly presence. Let's open them up now. Even if it's only the start of the days of the tribulations, the great and dreadful day of the Lord unfolding here in the 2020s and 2030s. It's like a final Christmas day, and it's still a little ways away. Simply, you don't want to have to wait for the future wanderings in the wilderness of the remnant as foretold by Isaiah, and then the long march and all that jazz before being able to get finally open. You get to finally open the eventual Zion presence. In essence, the building of eventual Zion, final Zion, with all the angels, the pure in heart people who will bring their respective endowments and miraculous spiritual gifts of God that he's poured down upon them to build his Zion. So we're looking forward to that. But early Zion is before that. That's what we're doing right now. This is the precursors. This is like the prototype iPhones, not iPhone 1. Nope, that's what we're looking forward to. This is Zion version alpha version, like before beta. And then after beta, there we go. Then we'll get up to what we call eventual Zion. Finally, I believe Jesus has put this episode 00, into my heart because he wants to help navigate me and explain to others why I'm not available for certain work that is of interest to them. So as things have developed, I find that there's certain people who say, oh, Greg, you need to do this, you need to do that. Like, that's not my mission. Because I'm booked as an architect, engineer, and the design work for early Zion, while Jesus is booking other people to other things. I see people who are called to be doctrinaires, that is, to deep dive in the doctrine and share it. Good. Excellent. I'm not called to that. I'm called to be a street preacher, but a lot of my preaching is about, what you'll find in Pluck Out My Eye. Some people are called to correcting the saints, that they're, called to whatever that means. They're called to politics, to prepping for the end of days, get your week together, or whatever. And I'm called to some of that, but it's just minor. I'm not called to football. I'm not called to soccer. Some people are. Oh, yeah, it's their career. It's their calling. Entertainment, yeah. I bet you that Jesus has called somebody like Donny Osmond, Marie Osmond, to entertain us. And that's wonderful. Hallelujah. So they're doing their jobs, and they Pluck Out My Eye would have very little interest to them and to most people. This episode will remind me, so I'm doing this episode like for you? Yeah, probably, if you're going through this, but especially for me, because I need to see myself as I watch these episodes again and again, saying this, Greg, this episode is to remind you of what you need to say a big yes to, and what you need to say no, and sometimes a big no to. So when people come and say, hey, Greg, you should read this book, you should come to this rally, you should do X, Y, or Z, I'll need to ask them, how is this related to my mission of building Zion in the open, like Noah built the ark in the open? I'll have to say, hey, if you really think that you need me, please watch all the episodes of Pluck Out My Eye, and then tell me how what you're inviting me to relates to that. Or you don't have to watch them all, you would actually have to. If you really wanted to ask me in a good way, you'd have to read Pluck Out My Eye. But I can tell you what, there's not a whole bunch of people lining up. Greg, we need to have you. Just some family and some friends here and there. And sometimes Jesus says, go help them. So like, okay, well, this isn't like related to putting the ark together, but maybe it is. And so Jesus is very tricky that way. Some things I don't think are related, like, oh no, this is architectural stuff. Architect, engineer, foundational stuff. So, okay, well, that's the message. And as you proceed through Pluck Out My Eye, understand that your spirit will be paying attention. You're like, no, this isn't for me. And it might be, this isn't for me right now, or this is not at all. I don't believe in this, or whatever. Trust that. Trust that. Just like trust that. Like, okay, you can just send me an email. Greg, I don't think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Fine. Or don't send me an email. Just do whatever Jesus tells you to do. And that's what I'm striving to do. And I think that's the biggest thing that I advocate is, what is Jesus having you do? And trust that. And we're all just individual pieces of a puzzle, much bigger puzzle that Jesus will assemble. So we don't have to try to drag ourselves across the board to hook up with somebody that we're not supposed to hook up with that person. Maybe not now, maybe not ever. And it's fine. Jesus will do that. That's what I'm trusting. Once again, made this episode so I can tell myself, hey, Greg, very, very few people are going to be interested in this. But those few are the ones that Jesus will bring. You don't have to try to grab them. No, they'll watch this episode and they'll go, kind of liking that. I think I'll go to episode 0. I tried 0, 0. Yeah, I'm going to go to 0. Then you go to 0. And then you go to episode 1. If you find yourself about episode 5 and you're still liking it, very likely you're an architect, engineer, designer of early Zion, or you're called to assist those people. And then do whatever Jesus tells you to do. That's what I'm going to do today.